The Bakery Competition, Part 1. In a small town called Sweetville, there was a bakery named Tasty Treats. The bakery was famous for its delicious cakes, cookies, and pies. It was run by Mrs. Clara, an elderly woman who loved to bake. Every day, people from all over the town would visit Tasty Treats to enjoy the fresh and tasty baked goods. One day, a big announcement was made in Sweetville. The town was going to have a bakery competition. The winner would receive a golden trophy and the title of Best Baker in Sweetville. The competition was open to everyone, and many people were excited to join. Mrs. Clara was thrilled when she heard the news. She had been baking for many years, and this was her chance to show her skills to the whole town. But Mrs. Clara wasn't the only one excited. Her two young assistants, Lucy and Ben, also wanted to participate in the competition. Lucy was 15 years old and had been helping Mrs. Clara in the bakery for a year. She loved decorating cakes and cookies with colorful icing and sprinkles. Ben, who was 16, was very good at making bread. He could bake soft and fluffy bread that everyone loved. One afternoon, Mrs. Clara sat down with Lucy and Ben to discuss the competition. "Are you both planning to enter the competition?" Mrs. Clara asked with a smile. "Yes, Mrs. Clara." "I want to bake a big, beautiful cake," Lucy said excitedly. "I want to bake the best bread in town," Ben added, with determination in his voice. Mrs. Clara nodded. "That's wonderful. But remember, the competition will be tough. Many people will be baking their best recipes. You will need to work hard and be very creative." Lucy and Ben looked at each other. They knew that Mrs. Clara was right. They would have to give it their all if they wanted to win. The competition was only a week away, so they started preparing right away. Lucy spent her evenings practicing different cake designs. She experimented with different flavors like chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. She tried different decorations using fresh fruits, chocolate chips, and colorful sprinkles. Ben focused on perfecting his bread recipe. He tried making different kinds of bread, such as whole wheat, rye, and sourdough. He practiced kneading the dough to make it just right and baked loaf after loaf until he was satisfied. Mrs. Clara was very proud of Lucy and Ben. She watched them work hard every day and offered advice whenever they needed it. As the days passed, the excitement in Sweetville grew. Posters about the competition were put up all over town. People talked about what they would bake and who they thought might win. The competition was all anyone could talk about. Finally, the day of the competition arrived. The town square was filled with booths where the bakers would display their creations. There was a large stage in the middle where the judges would sit and taste the baked goods. Lucy and Ben arrived early to set up their booths. Lucy's booth was decorated with bright pink and yellow ribbons, and her cakes were displayed on a tall, white stand. Ben's booth was simple, with a wooden table covered in a red and white checkered cloth. His freshly baked bread was arranged in baskets. Mrs. Clara also had a booth where she displayed her famous apple pies. She was calm and confident, ready to show the town her baking skills. The competition began with the judges walking around, tasting the different baked goods. They were 3 judges: Mr. Thomas, the mayor of Sweetville, Mrs. Green, a well-known chef, and Mr. Miller, a food critic from the big city. As the judges approached Lucy's booth, her heart raced. She handed them a slice of her chocolate strawberry cake, decorated with fresh strawberries and chocolate curls. The judges tasted it carefully, nodding their heads in approval. "This is very good, Lucy," Mr. Thomas said. "The cake is soft, and the flavor is excellent." Lucy smiled, relieved that they liked her cake. Next, the judges went to Ben's booth. Ben gave them a piece of his whole wheat bread, topped with a little butter. The judges took a bite and smiled. "This bread is wonderful, Ben," Mrs. Green said. "It's soft with a nice, warm flavor." Ben felt a sense of pride. His hard work was paying off. The judges continued tasting the other baked goods in the competition. There were all kinds of treats: cookies, pies, pastries, and even a giant chocolate sculpture. The competition was fierce, and everyone had done their best to impress the judges. As the day went on, the atmosphere in the town square was filled with excitement. People chatted about their favorite treats, and the air was filled with the sweet smell of baked goods. Finally, it was time for the judges to make their decision. Everyone gathered around the stage, waiting anxiously to hear the results. Mr. Thomas stood up and took the microphone. "Thank you all for participating in this wonderful competition," he began. "We have tasted some amazing baked goods today, and it was a tough decision, but we have made our choice." Lucy and Ben held their breath, their hearts pounding in their chests. They knew that only one person could win the title of Best Baker in Sweetville, to be continued in part . The Bakery Competition, Part 2. The crowd in the town square was silent, waiting for Mr. Thomas to announce the winner. The tension in the air was thick, and Lucy and Ben could feel their hearts beating faster and faster. Mr. Thomas smiled warmly at the crowd and said, "Before we announce the winner, I want to say how impressed we are with all the bakers. Each one of you has shown incredible talent and creativity. This competition was not just about winning. It was about celebrating the art of baking and the joy it brings to our community." The crowd applauded, and Lucy and Ben exchanged a quick glance. They felt proud to be part of something so special. But still, they couldn't help but feel nervous. Who would win the golden trophy? Mr. Thomas continued, "We have 3 special awards to give today. The first award is for Best Cake. This award goes to the baker who created the most beautiful and delicious cake we tasted." Lucy's heart skipped a beat. Could it be her? She had worked so hard on her cake, perfecting every detail. The winner of the Best Cake Award is… Mr. Thomas paused for dramatic effect. Lucy! The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Lucy's eyes widened in surprise and joy. She couldn't believe it. She had won. She quickly walked up to the stage, where Mr. Thomas handed her a small silver trophy shaped like a cake. She smiled widely as she held it up for everyone to see. "Thank you so much," Lucy said, her voice trembling with excitement. "I'm so happy and grateful. I worked really hard on this cake, and it means so much to me that you liked it." As Lucy returned to her booth, her face glowing with pride, Mrs. Clara gave her a big hug. "I knew you could do it, Lucy. You have a real talent for baking." Ben was thrilled for Lucy, but his own heart was still pounding. He had his sights set on another award. Mr. Thomas spoke again. "The next award is for Best Bread. This goes to the baker who made the most delicious and perfectly baked bread." Ben's hands were sweaty, and he could hardly stand still. He had spent so much time perfecting his bread, and now the moment of truth had arrived. The winner of the Best Bread Award is Ben. A wave of relief and happiness washed over Ben as the crowd cheered for him. He walked up to the stage with a wide grin on his face. Mr. Thomas handed him a silver trophy shaped like a loaf of bread. "Thank you," Ben said, his voice filled with emotion. "I'm so happy to receive this award. Baking bread is my passion, and I'm so glad you enjoyed it." As Ben walked back to his booth, Lucy gave him a high five. "Congratulations, Ben, you deserve it." Mrs. Clara also gave Ben a warm hug. "I'm so proud of you, Ben. You've grown into a wonderful baker." The excitement was far from over. Mr. Thomas had one more important award to announce. "And now," Mr. Thomas said, "the final award is for the best baker in Sweetville. This award goes to the baker who not only made the best-tasting baked goods, but also showed exceptional creativity and skill. The winner of this award will receive the Golden Trophy." The crowd fell silent again, everyone holding their breath. This was the biggest award of the day, and everyone was eager to see who would win. Mr. Thomas looked at the judges, who nodded in agreement. "The winner of the Best Baker in Sweetville Award is Mrs. Clara." The crowd exploded into applause. Mrs. Clara was taken aback. She had been so focused on helping Lucy and Ben that she hadn't even thought about winning the award herself. Mrs. Clara walked up to the stage, her eyes shining with tears of joy. Mr. Thomas handed her the golden trophy, which was shaped like a beautifully decorated cake with a sparkling top. "Thank you, Mrs. Clara said, her voice full of emotion. "I am so honored to receive this award. Baking has been my life's passion, and I'm so happy to share it with all of you." She turned to the crowd, holding the trophy high. "But this award isn't just for me. It's for everyone who loves to bake, who finds joy in creating something special with their own hands. Baking brings people together, and that's what makes it so wonderful." The crowd cheered loudly, and Lucy and Ben joined in, clapping and shouting with excitement. They were so happy for Mrs. Clara, who had taught them so much and had always believed in them. After the awards were given, the competition turned into a big celebration. People walked around, tasting more of the delicious baked goods, chatting with the bakers, and enjoying the festive atmosphere. There was music, laughter, and the sweet smell of cakes and bread in the air. Lucy and Ben were busy at their booths, talking to people about their creations and offering samples. Many people complimented Lucy on her beautifully decorated cake and Ben on his perfectly baked bread. They were both beaming with pride. Mrs. Clara's booth was also very popular. Her apple pies were flying off the table, and everyone wanted to congratulate her on winning the title of Best Baker in Sweetville. As the sun began to set, the celebration started to wind down. People slowly made their way home, carrying bags full of baked goods and memories of a wonderful day. Lucy, Ben, and Mrs. Clara stayed behind to pack up their booths. They were tired but happy, still riding the high of their success. Today was amazing, Lucy said as she carefully packed her cake stand. I can't believe I won an award. Me too, Ben added as he put away his bread baskets. It feels so good to know that all our hard work paid off. Mrs. Clara smiled at them both. You two did an incredible job today. I'm so proud of you both. You've learned so much, and I can see that you're both going to be great bakers one day. As they finished packing up, Mrs. Clara looked at the golden trophy she had won. It was beautiful, and she was deeply honored to have received it. But what made her happiest was seeing Lucy and Ben succeed. You know, Mrs. Clara said, holding the trophy in her hands, this competition wasn't just about winning for me. It was about passing on the love of baking to the next generation. And seeing you both do so well today means more to me than any trophy ever could. Lucy and Ben looked at Mrs. Clara with admiration. She had been their mentor, guiding them with patience and wisdom. They knew they were lucky to have learned from someone as talented and kind as her. Thank you, Mrs. Clara, Lucy said softly. We wouldn't be here without you. Ben nodded in agreement. You've taught us so much, and we'll always be grateful. Mrs. Clara smiled, her heart full of pride and love for her young bakers. And I'll always be here to help you on your journey. Remember, baking isn't just about following a recipe. It's about putting your heart into everything you make. With those words, they finished packing up and made their way home, the golden trophy shining brightly in Mrs. Clara's hands. The bakery competition in Sweetville had brought the town together in a celebration of talent, creativity, and community. And for Lucy, Ben, and Mrs. Clara, it had been a day they would never forget, a day when their love for baking had truly shown, and they had shared that joy with everyone around them. And so, the story of the bakery competition came to a sweet and satisfying end, leaving everyone inspired to bake, create, and share the love of good food with those they care about.